special treat because we had Shesh Besh yesterday teaching a music workshop in our music department, and the students absolutely love them. So I know we're in for a wonderful evening. This concert is a highlight of our year and marking our 20th year of being in existence at the center, and it's a wonderful way to mostly end our academic year. Beyond our program of classes that we have for students at the university, we also offer programs like this. And as you know, AU is known for being a very political university in the heart of the nation's capital, and that's why a lot of our students come here. So of course, Israel being in the news all the time, and for many reasons, we do a lot of programs focused on international relations and geopolitical challenges. But we also cover other aspects of Israel. In fact, 2 hours ago, we just had a Startup Nation Tech Fair on campus that our Israel Business Club organized, and we co-sponsored. And we have been having a writer series with some of our most wonderful Israeli writers, and we're excited to say that we have Edgar Carrot coming this fall, so that will be a highlight of our fall season. But tonight's program, as I said, is very special because we get to experience the virtuosity of not only one of the world's great orchestras, the Israel Philharmonic, but also to experience the virtuosity of some of its Eastern musicians. And the Eastern tradition is very old, and it's very different than the Western tradition, but equally virtuoso, however you say that. And together they've created a beautiful and unique melding of musical styles, which is a wonderful way to experience the type of coexistence that exists in Israel in fields as diverse as medicine, and tonight we'll see the melding of those styles in music. So I am here not just on behalf of the Center for Israel Studies, but I want to thank our co-sponsors of tonight's program, the Department of Performing Arts Music Program, the Greater Washington Forum on Israeli-Arab Issues, and in particular the support of the Naomi and Nehemiah Cohen Foundation. I want to acknowledge our director, Michael Brenner, who's here with us tonight. And I want to say that while we're mostly done with the academic year, we will be co-presenting Israeli films in the Washington Jewish Film Festival, which is coming up in May, so encourage you to check out those offerings. And we will be having a brief question and answer period after the concert tonight. And it's now my special pleasure to welcome a good friend and a wonderful representative that we're very happy to have in Washington, Elad Strohmeyer, who's the spokesperson of the Israeli Embassy. And this is the second time that we've worked with the Embassy in bringing such a special experience to campus. So thank you, Elad.
Thank you, Laura, and good evening. I know that this is the main course of the evening, so I'll keep it brief, though Israelis and diplomats can speak for a while. But first, before coming here, I asked Laura, who should I thank tonight? And she said, don't worry, I'm thanking all the sponsors, just talk about whatever you want to talk about. But I do want to thank two amazing people that really bring Israel to campus and do such a remarkable work to showcase the beautiful faces of Israel. So that's Laura. Thank you very much, Laura. And Michael. Toda rabba. Thank you. I must say that it's a treat and special honor to be here tonight because today is a special day, and I want to explain. On April 9th in Israel, we go to the pollings. We have elections. Elections are very political, very loaded, and I don't want to talk about that. But also, I think what a lot of people don't know about the Israeli political system and the elections is that we have a multi-party system. We have 11 parties right now in the Knesset. In the elections on April 9th, right now we have 42 parties running, which is a ridiculous number of parties. And according to the polls, right now it seems like that between 10 to 14 of them will enter the Knesset. Why do I share this with you, and why today is a special day? Today, we voted at the embassy. In Israel, we don't have absentee ballots. We have 2 weeks before, diplomats or government employees that are representing the country abroad can vote. So I cast my vote today at the embassy, and the polling is actually already closed. It closed at 8. And the ballot box will go to Israel, will be stored in a secure safe, and on election night, when they cast and when they count all the votes, they're going to count ours as well. So it's very unique. And why do I talk about politics and Israeli election in a cultural night like that? Because the multi-party system in Israel, I think the genius of this system is that it represents the entire people of Israel. It showcases the diversity of the Israeli society. We can make fun of it on one side, but on the other hand, we have a party for right-wing and for left-wing, for Arabs, for Jews, for religious Jews, for Ashkenazi ultra-Orthodox, for Haredi ultra-Orthodox, for moderate right-wing social issues, moderate left-wing social issues, etc., etc., etc. We have party for everything. Everyone find a place, and I think it has its own set of challenges, but it also has a beauty that we feel represented. And sometimes, and I hear here in America, when you have two parties, sometimes people feel that they don't necessarily represent by the elected officials, and I don't think Israel is that case. So in our Knesset, we see the diversity for better and for worse, and tonight we're gonna see the diversity of Israel, because I think culture is a bridge between people, between identities, between worldviews, and while if we're gonna talk politics, maybe some Jews and some Arabs, it's gonna be very, very difficult. When it comes to music, when it comes to culture, it's a universal language, and that's the beauty of it. So I think that on our preliminary elections tonight, before April 9th, to celebrate the Israeli diversity, the voices and sounds from West and East, which is Israel, because we're West and East all together, it's a huge treat. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, everyone, and let's enjoy the show. Toda rabah.
Good evening, and welcome to this concert of Shesh Besh. We opened with Longa Ajam. Longa is like a polka. I won't try to teach you too much about music this evening. Longa Ajam, and the composer, very famous Arab composer, and he's sitting right with us, Sami Khashibun. We're going to continue with a piece called Shibolet Besadeh. Shibolet Besadeh, Shibolot are sheaves, and sheaves of wheat, Besadeh in the field. So sheaves of wheat in the field. Israeli folk song, but we've done something special with it. We're going to play it in a very Western style, the beginning, and we're going to surprise you a little bit in the second half. Shibolet Besadeh. course, Shibolet Besadeh featured our flute player Yossi Auenheim. And I just want to say that towards the end of the concert, we'll have an opportunity if you want to ask questions. So be thinking all along about maybe there's something you want to ask about. The next piece is a very interesting piece of Arab music. And I'm going to ask Aziz Nadaf, our percussionist, to demonstrate the rhythm. The bars are bars of 10, and they're divided 3, 2, 2, 3. And please don't count. He's going to play first downbeats and heavy beats and light beats for 2 bars, and then he's going to ornament that same rhythm for 2 bars. In Eastern music, the low beat is called doom. Let's hear doom. And the upper beat is called tak. So this was the rhythm of samai, 10 beats in a bar. And we're going to play a samai by an Iraqi composer, musician, who came to Israel at the beginning of the 1950s. And he had a long career in Israel in the radio broadcasting, called Yisrael. His name was Salim El-Nour. Samai Kurd in La. Kurd is the scale, or makam, and composer Salim El-Nour. Now we're in for a little trouble because we're going to play a piece which you all know. It's the eighth Slavonic dance of Antonin Dvorak. And we're going to play it with 3 Eastern instruments and 2 Western instruments. Now, what's the connection? The connection is that folk music is folk music, and Dvorak was great at writing folk music. In fact, when he was for 3 years in America, and he was director of the conservatory in New York. And his closest companion was his librarian in the orchestra. The librarian was an Afro-American. And in the evenings, he was often a guest at the librarian's home. And there he heard the folk music of the Afro-Americans and Indian population of the New World. He went back to the Czech, what is today the Czech Republic, and then he wrote the New World Symphony. So he knows what folk music is about, and we know what folk music is about from playing both the music of the Arab community and the Jewish community. So we're putting it all together now. Slavonic Dance by Dvorak, number 8. The arrangement is by Yossi Arnheim. That was like goulash with a little bit of hummus in it. And now we'll do something which is a little bit safer. We'll just play straight Eastern music. The composer is Muhammad Abdul Wahab. And the piece is, Muhammad Abdul Wahab was Egyptian. He was active in the beginning of the 20th century, and he was very famous for big orchestras, big sound of Arab music. Usually Arab music is played by 5 players. He did it with full orchestras. One of his most famous pieces is Balad al-Mahbub, Muhammad Abdul Wahab. Yikra, freedom will call, or the calling of freedom. Yemenite folk song. I should say something about Yossi. You know, Yossi and I played together for 35 years in the Israel Philharmonic. He left the orchestra. He didn't go all the way to age 67. He left the orchestra 4 months before me. And he said to me, about a year ago, he said, you know, I'm going to get out of the orchestra before you. You know, he just got a little dig in. And we just talked today. He said since he's left the orchestra, he's teaching all the time, enjoying life, taking us on tour. He's organized this tour, and he's arranged most of the pieces of music of this concert. So Yossi is the soloist. Now, there's something that most people, with a name like Arnheim, you're absolutely sure he's coming from Germany. But his mother is not from Germany. His mother is from Iraq. So Yossi, like this group, East-West, is in one person, East-West. He's schizophrenic completely in music. So he is now going to be the soloist in Dwor Yikra, a Yemenite folk tune, Freedom Will Call. The solo oud was played by Michael Haron. The next piece is by Avram Amzalag. It's about the desert, and I just noticed now that the English translation of the composer is desolation, and in Hebrew we call it desert, the translation would be desert scene, midbarit. Solo flute originally, and we will accompany Yossi on his journey through the desert. And we're returning to a piece by our violinist, Sami. Now you might be wondering what's the difference between, he looks like he's just playing a regular violin. He's not at all playing a regular violin. He is in fact tuned completely differently from our Western violin. And Sami is trained originally in a conservatory to play European music, and on the side he took up the Eastern violin. Today he's teacher in the Academy of Music in Jerusalem of violin, and he has often done programs for television explaining Eastern music. The next piece is a composition from 2008. It's called Samai Nahawand, Shel Sami Cheshibun. usually when a composer is at a concert, he has to explain the piece. And in this case, there's nothing, we didn't need explanation. Now, I'm going to introduce myself before the next piece, because the next piece is very, very special. My name is Peter Mark. I played in the Israel Philharmonic for 43 years. The next piece is actually, we should dedicate it to Laura because it's product of the last visit that we had here at the university, which was 7 years ago. It's called Zafaf. It's representative of wedding songs at a Palestinian wedding. And you'll see how the piece develops, as many marriages do. This ends very happily. And the reason that I'd like to dedicate it to Laura is because at the reception after the last time we were here, one of the members of the audience said that I didn't give enough emphasis on our Palestinian background. And I said, well, I didn't want to, make any political blunders. So no blunders. This is straight from a Palestinian wedding. And this, just like Sami represents the music of Israel and Palestine, this also represents the music. The piece is called Zafaf. Okay, now it's your turn. And then we should turn on the lights, and if anybody has any questions, we'd love to answer. And yes, you have a question, right? There are a few CDs here this evening. Yeah.
Mostly other pieces.
Oh.
Your God. Hi, I play the violin. You're absolutely amazing. You're like the ensemble of God. God has handpicked you to play for us, and you guys are beautiful. I admire you. So I play the violin, and you said that he's not tuned traditionally, like Westernly, right?
Right. Sami, the question is, how are you tuned right now? Just play your open strings.
Tuning? G, D, G, D.
Oh, okay.
Sol, re, sol, re.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Yes.
Do you improvise at all?
Improvisation is a lot of. First of all of our concerts are kind of improvised. In Eastern music, like when you hear Sami and Aziz and Michael play, a lot of their music is improvised. Yossi and I are good at reading music because in Western music, the great thing about Western music is that it's written. And so as soon as you can write music clearly, you can write two voices. And as soon as you can write two voices, you can write 16 voices. You can write an entire orchestra with everybody playing something different. We have a different technique. We have one line of music. Let me just find. This is the piece that we played by Muhammad Abdul Wahab. We're all playing from the same piece of music, and we're making while we're performing, we're playing let's call it the orchestration. Everybody's making up the orchestration. And then you can also add ornamentation to this melody, or you can add improvisation to it. But that's a much bigger part of today's Eastern music than in Western music. At one time in Western music, composers like Beethoven, Mozart, Haydn, they were great, great improvisers, and even there are famous stories of, even in the 20th century, of composers like Paul Hindemith sitting down to play an octet, and he played second viola, and they asked him where his music was, and he said, "Well, I haven't written it down yet." So improvisation is part of Western music also, but it's also reading the music is.
I just add that all the long solos that you heard from Sami and from Michael were improvised.
We noticed that Aziz doesn't have any music in front of him. So we were wondering how, you know when to come in and go out and all that. So it was interesting to see that everybody had music except in front of them, except you.
I have a great memory.
In fact, you know, when you play without music, look, most of the world's musicians play without music. It's only in the Western world that we play with music. And we have another flute player who he plays Oriental flute. And I remember one rehearsal when he had to learn a melody, and Yossi played for him the melody, and it took him 1 or 2 tries, and then he knew it, okay? By memory. Which is great. But then the amazing thing was that we played the piece again 3 weeks later, and absolutely by memory. There was no, he had no hesitation at all. Because if you play without music, you develop the other side of the playing, which is memory. We, Yossi and I, who have sat in the orchestra for 30 or 40 years, we've developed the ability to read music. It's completely different.
Hi. I wanted to thank you all for a wonderful performance that I will not soon forget. I have a question for Sami. In the solo piece that you played in Shibolet Basadeh, I could hear somebody singing in Arabic. The violin sounded that way. How do you do it?
Well, Sami asked me to translate. He actually took some part of the song and he improvised on it, so maybe it sounded a little bit like singing.
It says that you're a percussionist. Are there other instruments that you play? That's question 2, and the question number 1 is, how do you keep your hands viable?
I play also wood and flute and piano.
But in percussion,
And percussion, yeah. I play the buka.
And you
I play
sing.
drum.
And the drum, okay. In your spare time.
And I play.
Okay, one more question, then we want to play another piece. One more question? Ah, here. I'm tuned regularly, GDAE. But it's an interesting question because the oud, which is actually the father of the string family, is an instrument called rabab, and it's a Bedouin. Today, only the Bedouins play it. It has a leather front, and it has a string made of camel, usually camel hair, and the bow also the same hair. And the big revolution in string instruments was when instruments started to be made of wood, because leather is very unstable, and when it's dry it's tight, when it's humid it's loose, and the tuning is all different. So oud is from the word wood, and Michael's instrument is called the oud, and when it went across North Africa it went into Spain, and it was called el oud, the oud, which became lauta, oud. And the lute is what we know. Sami, יש לך fretting? No. Sami has no frets. Michael has no frets on the oud. The lute has frets, which went off into the direction of the guitar, and this instrument went in the direction of violin. Today, a violin maker is called a luthier. The double bass got stuck in its development. It was didn't get enough oxygen, I guess, when it came time to go into the violin family. And the double bass is actually closer to the oud than it is to the violin. And this is typical tuning in fourths for also the oud, unlike the violin, which is tuned in fifths. So that's a complicated answer to a simple question, and that's it. So our last piece this evening is, again, East and West, and composer is Western, Camille Saint-Saëns, and he wrote about a story which took place in the East, which is Samson and Delilah. Well, he had to figure out some material, and I don't think Camille I think he went to Egypt, actually, but when he wrote the opera and wrote the movement called Bacchanal, which is where everybody's drinking wine, he wrote a melody which doesn't exist, in fact, in Arab music, but you'll recognize it right away. But it's his original thing, which is a very typical technique of Western composers. For instance, Antonin Dvorak wrote folk songs. You say, well, they must have danced to that in the village. Not a bit. Dvorak wrote all of his folk songs for his pieces, in the same way that Camille Saint-Saëns wrote the melody of the next piece. You'll recognize it right away. And then in the middle, we're going to switch into something which is completely Palestinian folk song from the street called Ayazen, which is a big solo of Michael. And then we're going to end with the Bacchanal in the end, a longa, which is, like I said at the beginning, polka, and then we all go home and have fun. Okay, so Samson and Delilah, Camille Saint-Saëns.